done a lot of mentoring and sort of guiding creatives, but this last year has been a lot of that, of people either pivoting or needing to strengthen or find some motivational inspiration to keep going and sort of keep focused on what they do and how they can do it and best make the most of skills and concepts. But we're here to support. I mentioned at the end of the last one, I mentioned again, I'll probably give you the full information at the end of the series, but we are launching a brand and PR incubator and accelerator program where we're part sponsoring a sort of limited number of brands for a 3 to 12 month program. We've got loads of amazing experts that are going to be doing sort of mini TED Talks, and there's some one-to-one coaching and also PR services. So I'll give you more about that. But yeah, we've got all sorts, even Karen Franklin, we've got experts from all different creative areas, even Andrew Barton, hairdresser, we've got some music industry, an art curator, various other fashion people. So dog is trying to bite the tripod again, so I'll hold on to her. So I'll tell you more about that. We generally do a lot of mentoring and coaching people. So again, if anyone is interested in that as we go along or further in the series, then I'm happy to give you more info. But it's just a way for us to be able to support you along a journey, get guidance, more homework, but to keep you focused, help you sort of think outside the box with what you do, and help you with sort of contacts and all sorts. So I'll tell you more about that. So last week we talked about branding and talked about what branding is, how you can use it, who it's for, and the homework I gave to you all last week was around values. And for me, for us, in working in branding is a funny one that there's a lot of very traditional ways of teaching branding, and I'm sure if you've ever looked online at what branding is and any courses, there is quite a traditional methodology around it. For us, for me, it's about mindset, and it is about a feeling, and not that doesn't make it tangible or quantifiable, because you build everything around that. It is about building the world of your brand, and a brand being an experience and the connection of feeling that you build with your audience, and understanding who your audience is. Today I want to talk a bit more about customer, sort of touched on it a little bit, though when I teach marketing, customer is one of the biggest topics to talk about because it's the center of everything. It is for the branding part of the process too, and the more you can understand and focus on your audience, who they are and what they need, but how they feel, married with understanding your values, then that's where you can create the real magic and strength and value, not just your values, but then the value in what you do. So I mean, I don't know, this is going very teachery, but with anyone can kind of, based on what we learned last week, or sort of, or maybe how it's impacted you, of what you feel about values and values around the sort of branding topic. I don't know, it's I said quite a lot last week, and depending on how much or little people knew about this area beforehand, I think different things resonate with different people, and there's certain points that can really sort of hit home and give you a focus in what you're doing. I don't know whether anyone's willing to sort of speak up of sort of for them what that means or could mean for their business, or if it had any impact on sort of how you might sort of start to refocus your thinking around what you're doing. Is anyone feeling brave?
Yeah, hi. So yeah, I'm brave enough today.
Well done.
So yeah, I think the last time I've joined just half the meeting, unfortunately. Yeah. But like what you said about, we are creating our values, and every step we do, we think about our values. And I think that is kind of where I was like, oh, okay, and then you also said it makes decisions easier.
Yeah.
So working like on strong values and that they're really different from each other, I think is very important to make our life also easier, to make like decisions easier. So I think that's where I saw like the most important message for me personally, and also always that the consumer wants to engage with all your values. And that was my kind of taking from the last.
Well, that's great, and I'm pleased about that. That's good points to pull home on. So I'm pleased about that. I think it is really important. I think it's not something that just happens overnight, and that whole idea of focusing on the values of your business is something that obviously for me it's innate because of what I do and work in. But I think, you know, it's just something that needs to start to become ingrained, and it does become just, you know, the sort of the Bible for making any decision. And it does make it easy, but the thing is, it also makes it easy for customers to understand if they engage. And actually, if people are unsure, it makes it easy for them. You don't want people that aren't aligned with you to be messing about and wasting your time, to be honest with you. And that goes for whether you're a business as far as suppliers, or, you know, you just want, the more you give out the energy and create the understanding around your values and the world of what you do, and then you will attract those people. And it's like anything, you know, as far as, I don't know how much, you know, sort of the energy we give out is more powerful than things even that we say, and that's what people are attracted to. You know, it's the spirit, and that's what we want when we go, after we've gone over the values. We're going to talk about a little bit more about the spirit and personality of your world and your brand, because I touched on it last week, but that's how you bring it to life. So the values are the strong underpinning and the cornerstones of your business, and represent what you believe and what you give a shit about. But then the spirit and the personality is what brings it to life and creates that feeling. And that's the bit that people will, none of these things that we're talking about are tangible things, but they become a part of every tangible element of your business. So, you know, as I said, you know, whether it's down to what you design, who you design for, the colors that you choose, you know, it becomes part of the tangible assets, but in themselves, they're not tangible. But that's where it is the feeling. It's all about the feeling. So those two things we'll go back over. So has anyone who has done the homework that I set from last week and is willing to say or start off? So for those that are listening on YouTube or listening afterwards, the homework that Mistress set last week was to look at the values of your business. I generally talk about sort of 4 as a cornerstone, but up to 6 is okay, as the pillars of the underpinning your business. And these are the things that you, I'm going to just share my screen just as a recap for everyone of what that looks like as far as what the values are. And it becomes the cornerstones of your business and the sort of what you care about, and then how you live your whole business, and how you behave, how you make decisions, how you do everything for your business, really. So let me pull out the main page that will help. Okay, I'm going to just share my screen, and then it's just a little reminder for those to see. So the brand values, the core of the business model that creates the moral compass of your business, and helps to shape everything around what you do. It's the behavior and how you express and how you relate to others. So it becomes very important in everything that you do. And I think they underpin everything, so make them count. So on that vein, let's see who's interested and willing to discuss. Emma, you can go first, and then Lisa. Lisa's willing and Lisa's eager, but Emma, you go first.
So thank you so much, Zoe. I only caught the end, this like really towards the end, but your energy was so inspiring the last day.
Oh.
Whoa, yes, I'm so glad. I found it really tricky to find my way into the
yeah, of course.
But when I got here, I was like, yes, this is amazing, and everything you were saying on values just really spoke to me. And it has to start there. I had done an exercise before where I tried to figure out my own values, and authenticity and adventure were my final two when we funneled it down from 16. And then I landed on authenticity. And I just thought, yeah, authenticity above all else my truest value is authenticity, and how it's like how I go about my life. And I love that inquiry, because I realize that the things that trigger me in life are things that are in antithesis to that, like I don't know, say false gurus, and in the yogic world I get really triggered when people are kind of pretending they're something that they're not, like copycat kind of stuff. So anything that goes against authenticity, I'm like but also adventure. So those are definitely two that I would have really high in my brand that I'm working on. So the idea of authenticity.
What kind of brand is it? What kind of business is it? What's the sort of area?
I'm looking to do a really fun post-COVID kind of 1970s inspired disco fashion brand, hopefully with like sustainable sequins and something to give us joy after this all. So
we need that.
When we shall dance again is the vibe. So the idea with the
21st of June.
I mean, there's going to be a lot of weddings, there's going to be a big backlog, and and hopefully more festive. So the idea with authenticity, just being really true to yourself. And I think when for me with dancing and being on the dance floor, it's about self-expression and being your truest self. So that was another idea. It's, I guess this, I'll say them out to you and then see if you want to anyway. So I've got authenticity, being true to yourself, inclusivity and diversity, because it's something for everyone, and it's just such a big thing now, and something I believe in so much. Optimism, joy bringer, being that kind of that joy bringer energy, and kind of always looking on the bright side, being a dreamer, just being hopeful, I guess, the idea of hope and optimism. And then I have radical self-expression, but maybe that's tied in with authenticity. And then the final one I have is adventure seeker, storyteller, escapism. So I don't know if
what I would say, and I think this, what I would say is I think they're great. I think that within the process for everyone of going through this, the first thing is definitely about a brainstorm around the wording, around how that feels and sits with you as the owner of the business and the brand, and where you see the business going. I think that authenticity makes sense, and I think that, I mean, obviously without knowing your business, but I think what I would say with any of the values for all of you is what you have to make sure, and I know I said this last week, is that you need to think about every area of your business and to be able to know that you can live by it in every way, internally and externally, and visually, and sort of tangibly and spirit-wise, and on every level. And I think you can almost test yourself a little bit, because not forgetting some of these words, if they don't get used as your values, can become a part of your spirit and your personality. And we'll go into that a little bit more after this. So some of them are more how it feels and how it looks, and then others are literally how you live. And I think authenticity, yes, that's a really good cornerstone. I think there's a few of the words that you said that potentially sort of all come a little bit under a similar umbrella. And inclusivity, I think diversity sits within inclusivity. For us as an agency, it's not our values, it's not within our values, but it's our focus. Being we work in inclusivity, diversity and sustainability in everything that we do. They're the areas that we kind of focus a lot on, and that covers everything. Actually, I've got an amazing talk tomorrow, if anyone that's free. I'm doing an Instagram live at 1 tomorrow with Amy Singh, who started Sink the Pink and Margate Arts Club and Margate Pride and whatever. But yes, so we're talking a lot about inclusivity tomorrow. That will be a great chat. But I
love Sink the Pink. I've booked them before. for an event. You're amazing.
They're great. So there's topics there, but you have to just again ask that question. Are you certain that, so say inclusivity is a value, you have to be sure that in your sizing you're going to have a wide size range, because you can't say you're an inclusive brand and then only have from size 8 to 14. You know, so it doesn't mean that you're not going to be inclusivity focused, but as far as a value, if you sort of have that as an internal value. Now, of course, it's impossible to be inclusive for everyone, and as a brand, it's really expensive. And you know, and even, I mean, I've had my own brands. I always like, I'm doing every size for everyone. Now, it's impossible because it costs you a fortune, and the reason a lot of brands don't is because, you know, the how things sell. So it's and also, you know, within photography, you can't say you're an inclusive brand, but then it's sort of 4 white girls that are whatever. So I think, and I'm not saying you would, but I suppose that's what you just have the question.
Yeah, but I could say right off the bat that like any outward media photography, any photo shoot would be very forward pushing, and it would always be, you know, a wide variety of
and also
sizes,
around
shapes,
the staff
colors,
you hire. So I'm not saying you won't, but that's the questions. So it's the staff you hire, because you can't just do photography but you've got to make sure internally you are around the, you know. So these are just the questions when you're looking at the values. So I think it's a great value if you can live by it. I think the escapism, adventure, they may well be more spirit. It might well be, and when I show you some of the mood boards around our spirit as a brand, it might well be the visual representation, interpretation of your values as a brand, rather than the actual value that underpins you.
Yeah.
So it might well be that it's inclusivity, for example, authenticity, and I'm trying to remember all the different ones you said, but
expression and kind of optimism.
So maybe it might be that one is actually creativity, and everything you do is around creativity, which might encompass the expression, and, you know, because I think escapism is not really a value so much, but maybe more of a spirit and a personality sort of drive. So some of these words might be that more the representation of your sort of values. And also these words need to be super strong. They're like really sturdy words. And so some of those words become much more fluid and become very the spirit rather than the actual values. So yeah, what I would do, and I think from the suggestions last week, is really look at all the synonyms around each of them, and then really, and also, it's not even like for today to make the decision. You need to sit on them. You need to keep going back to them. If you've driven them down, I think 4 is good. But it's making sure, if you're, as a brand, you're very creative and everything's about sort of being creative. But equally, you can't say you're a creative brand if then you do very basic t-shirts and that, you know. So again, it has to be around every element of what you do. Otherwise, it's fine that you can still be creative, but it just doesn't need to be a value, you know. And that's it doesn't mean if it's not your value, you're not creative. So maybe sort of get towards 4 that kind of feel right, and then maybe we can even do another little recap next week, you know, when people have taken it one step further and kind of digging, like get children in English, dug a little bit deeper. So yeah, so I think that's a brilliant start, and I think it's then after today you might sort of be able to filter which ones feel more like spirit and personality, and which ones are definitely kind of real sort of deep core values.
Awesome. Thank you.
No worries. Lisa, did you want to? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Hello.
There you go.
Well, no, you sort of answered everything really, because I loved what you said about it being the underpinning of everything you do in your business, and to keep going back to it. And so Sarah and I sort of brainstormed and just put a list of words down.
Yeah.
And then we chose sort of 4, and then we found some synonyms, and it's still, and I would say actually it's still a work in progress, because
for sure it could take months
looking at those and saying, well, is that us? And, you know, is that true? Is that really our value? I mean, basically we came up with like creativity and lots of synonyms, and responsibility, integrity, collaboration. But as I say, it is a work in progress, so it's something we'll keep going back to, I think, until we feel, yeah, that's us, that's it, because obviously we're not established yet or out there, we're working on it.
But I think also, just in the vein of that, of sort of, don't feel like, and also it's the brand, so it's not feeling like you two, it's feeling like the brand. And I think, I mean, like collaborative, for us, collaborative was one, but actually synergistic felt more encompassing of a way of working that kind of included collaborative. So, you know, it might explore that as a word. And I think, you know, like as I say, creative or anything around the creative, if that's a big part of the business, it might just be that you just have to really, the bit you need to analyze is less if it feels like you, but more if the brand can live by it. So don't sort of feel like it's got to suddenly, there'll be a moment of like, oh, this is definitely ours. These are the values rather than the sort of spirit. So it needs to feel like you can live by them rather than it's less emotional and more sort of you know, just sort of almost deeper than kind of, you know.
You want to be putting out what isn't true. It's only a half truth. You know, you need to keep looking at that word and saying, well, we're working by that.
That you can work on, but on, like I say, on every, not just the outward projection of the business, the internal too. So I think that's even within your processes, suppliers, all the way along, it has to be ways that you work in general. So I think that's important too, because people always think, you know, that it's just about the physical output to the world of the brand, but it needs to be from all angles for sure. Video's not feeding. Let me have a look. It's Karina has just popped hers up. But Lisa, I think to keep working on it is good, and if we do a little check-in, if you're here again next week, I think it's this branding is a process, and I think, you know, if I were to do like an hour talk and everyone had got it all and got their values, then either I would be a bloody magician or you know, or we hadn't gone deep enough. And I think definitely for all of you, you know, for Amazon, it's keeping working on it, but the fact that it feels like you're in a process is like I said, it's the mindset changing. And for me, that's what this is. And to be honest with you, at the end of this, if you gang are all in and are coming to each of the ones, it's a process. And I think it's brilliant, because if you're able to, branding is a process. It's not like learning sort of techniques of social media, which I could teach you, and then it would be like boom, 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 and it's a slightly more sciencey kind of, you know, algorithms and blah, 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 blah. But this isn't. This is about, one, it's the most important bit, as I said last week, that you do for your business on any level, bar none. This is the most important bit. You know, obviously, yes, it's about what you physically create. But do you know what? If you create the world, and I'm sure a lot of you've seen, there's brands, and it's that whole Emperor's New Clothes. You could sell air if you put the brands around it, and you can sell it in the right way, and you it becomes less about the actual product, which is quite good because it takes a bit of pressure off. But if you can build the world and the spirit, people want to be a part of it. It's so powerful. You know, if you think of any of these brands, it's like the Supremes or any of these, it's not like crazy innovative products, but they've sold the brand, positioned it well, built the audience, you know, got the mess. It's all of that. So actually the physical product, quite often with a lot of these really kind of sort of almost cult brands, it's about the world they build. And it could be anything, you know, the product in the end could be anything, and people want a part of it. LV, the people that want to buy into LV, it's not because they think, oh, what amazing designs. They want to be a part of that brand because they know the wording of it. My 10-year-old daughter keeps going about, I'm going to earn lots of money when I'm older, I'm going to be a lawyer, and I'm going to buy everyone Gucci bags. She's got no bloody idea what a Gucci bag really looks like. She's not saying that because she likes the design. It's because she's hearing people saying it. It's associated with money. You know, it's that whole idea of like you attach yourself to brands and you align with brands that you think synergize with your own personal values as a consumer. And that's where, you know, that's where it's so powerful, because you can then create anything. You might start off doing 70s feel good escape dancewear, whatever, But actually, if you create the brand, it could become anything. It could be a range of bags. It could be, you know, shoes. It could be anything. It could be events. Because if you create the brand and people align with the values, you can do what you like. And this is where people don't, or this is where it's often frustrating, because when we're selling in our services as for branding, and even to, you know, big businesses, people don't always get the sort of the value in investing in branding, because it's so intangible and it is a process. But it's so powerful. It's you can, it's like if you think even about real estate, and the hype around an area or a vibe or whatever, quite often you're buying into a vibe. It's not even about a physical place or a physical building you're buying into. You want to be a part of it. You want to be, I want to be in that, whatever, not so much now, you know, the old days like the Shoreditch scene. I want to be in the, you know, whatever, I'm in the Margate, or I want to be in the Margate, you know, whatever. It's, you know, it's really powerful. And I think it's the more you can understand that through this process, then it gives you power as a business to understand what's possible. And for me, that's the really exciting bit. I think once you get this, even for you going on to do other businesses, you can just add so much strength. And I think that is gold. And when, you know, when it comes to sort of thinking about sort of messaging and even sort of campaign side of things, Dove are brilliant. There's lots of examples I could, and I don't know, maybe down the line a bit, I'll show you some examples. It's really not, there's not a fancy product. It's a very basic sort of beauty brand, but conceptually they so get who they are and what their message is and values. And their video campaigns are, some of them are brilliant, they're genius, and they're not fancy, they're not actually very expensive, but they do a lot globally. And it's around the concept of sort of positivity, well-being, and whatever for women. If you look up on YouTube, Dove commercials, there's some really good ones around. There's one, because I might show you, because I've got it on the marketing workshop that I taught, but you know, getting women up to a building, and there's two doors, and one is sort of says pretty or something, or beautiful, and one says average, and they have to choose which door to go through. And there's this whole thing around, and everyone that goes through, and then there's a whole sort of process they go through in their head anyway, and everyone that goes through average then feels awful that actually they don't value themselves. And I know there's lots like that, but it's just it's the world of, and they build this whole idea of the strength of the women that they are. The product is shower gel, or it's whatever. The product's not fancy, but conceptually they build this world of the concept and the values of the business. So it's a good way to think. But ethical, femininity, simplicity, respect, right. So I think that ethical, if you feel that you can live by that, is a great value. It's a very strong value if you can if you can follow that through on every level. Like I say, you just have to almost keep yourself in check as a business that you are being ethical on every level. And like I say, that has to go for every, it's like inclusivity. It's one that you can't put as a value unless you're sure that you can live by it. You can still be ethically minded as a brand, but if sustainability or you know, sort of the ethical side is really important, then it should be a cornerstone. Femininity, I would say, is more of a spirit and a personality. Femininity is more the sort of the around the feeling that's created. So maybe is more about the spirit and personality rather than a value. Simplicity, you've got to be careful with that as a value. To say that you're simple as a brand might be slightly undervaluing yourself. But simplicity might come through the design, and it might be that it's it depends on what context you're meaning that. But if it's a value, it has to apply to everything. So I think that, you know, it might be that you do quite a complicated design if it's clothing or jewelry, whatever it is, that you might not want to put simplicity as a value because it restricts even the design process. So it might be that that's more a minimalism. So I would say that that's more stylistic and maybe more spirit and personality, Scandi style. So maybe, I mean, it might be that simplicity is a value in that You want to simplify but you need to then think about processes. So you need to simplify the process of purchase. You need to simplify the customer journey, simplify the message so it's very clean and simple and clear. You want to, so it might well be that that's a brilliant value, but you need to think about it from all contexts, not just visually. So you know, that's, I think in general for everyone, it's sort of, it could be a great value as long as you think about it from all angles. And maybe human rights would probably fit into ethical if that became a value. So it's quite often things can fit in together. Is there anyone else that wanted to talk about their values before I kind of move on a little bit and make sure I give you a little bit more? Happy to go through any of them.
I would like to say, so maybe good to give you a kind of information about my brand before I start with all my values.
No worries.
So my brand is Unravel, and it stands for Unraveling the Fashion Industry. And Lau is actually from my name because I'm Laura. Hello, nice to meet you. And I actually started it after watching The True Cost, and The True Cost documentary shocked me so much with all of the negative effects on fashion, on the environment because of the fashion industry. And as a consumer, but as well as a designer, kind of felt tricked in this system, and I wanted to change it. And at first I felt very helpless because I was like, okay, this is this huge thing, and how am I, as one single person, how am I going to do anything about it? But then I actually felt a lot of strength in the small things that I'm doing as a consumer by, for instance, not buying fast fashion, and well, also just in my everyday life, how do I say this? Separating my waste, for instance.
Yeah.
But then as a designer as well, I of course had the power to actually change the whole system because I am the designer. And kind of acknowledging that power is what I want my consumer to feel as well, that it doesn't matter how big the thing is that they want to achieve, but they can feel empowered by doing just a small thing. And that is what I want to have as an example from Unravel to the customer. So then I started looking at my values, and I thought it was very difficult. But one of them was bold, and I also had some other words which were powerful and in control of making your own.
Dangerous one as a value.
What?
I said in control can be it could be a dangerous one as a value.
Yeah. So therefore I thought bold because it sounds a bit more encouraging than in control. Sounds very, as if you're controlling the media or something, or controlling the mass. So I thought bold, but I'm still not very sure. As we all said, it's a journey indeed.
Yep.
But also ever evolving, because with the brand, I'm curious to see what's going on in the fashion industry and how it can be changed, but also how sustainability can be adapted and how it can grow. And I'm also looking for customers that are curious to see who they are themselves and what they're standing for.
So it's about journey and storytelling, maybe?
Yes, definitely.
So storytelling could be of value. Again, it has to follow through everywhere, that it all becomes about that. I think it's quite that area of empowerment and power and control is quite difficult in values. I don't know, I sort of said last time that empowerment is often a word that we use as a positive word, quite often empowering women, and but actually if you look at the meaning of that, it's really negative and dictatorial. So as a value, it's not a great word, but maybe dynamic could be something. That's actually one of ours, and that's then might also cover bold and cover because you could have a word like innovation, but innovation, unless you're going to be looking at the newest fabrics, and you're going to actually be innovating all the time, again, you're potentially setting yourself up for a fall. And I think that that whole idea of evolution and journey, that storytelling might be something that that you can, that could be something that becomes a cornerstone, that it's always about, so it's the storytelling around the process. You could be very transparent. I mean, again, authentic might be something, but it could be a transparency of the process, that you just make yourselves very transparent. You wouldn't put that as a value, because that's quite dangerous if you start going down the route of offering to be completely transparent, because but if you're authentic, then there's nothing to hide. So but if you do storytelling, you have to make sure that follows through into the language that you use, in the messaging that you have, the tone of voice, in the imagery, that you couldn't then, as far as a campaign, just have 4 models sat on a chair. There's not a lot of story, but so it might be that it becomes much more sort of film stilly and documentary, the photography, for example, that it becomes much more storytelling, that you might do focuses on some of the makers, the people within the process of your making, or, so there's lots of ways that you can encompass that. It's a little bit, and again, with this, if you gang on this series with us for the next couple, and if anyone else journeys with us or joins, I'm happy to sort of mold it a little bit so that it works for everyone, and adapt, and I can leave some of the content I was going to cover to sort of make this as helpful as possible. But I think that it's really it's learning with any of these topics, and then it's sort of gathering tools along the way, gathering momentum, and gathering sort of the ideology for your business as well. And for me, that's kind of how this process can be really useful and effective. Now, again, like, we're doing 4 hours in total of a series, so it's not like I then, if anyone wants more help, then obviously that's what we do. But I think that this is why picking these values is really important, to get it right, because that then can impact everything. Quite often people are like, well, I've got my website, I've designed product, oh, but and I've come up with a name, and I'm like, but I've not done any work on branding yet. I'm like, well, how did you make all those decisions? How did you make all those decisions? Now, it is possible, and you go based on what you like, but until you have more of an understanding, and you're also focusing on the customer, then it's quite difficult. So I think that the world is difficult enough, and the industry anyway is difficult enough before this bloody pandemic, that you don't really want to make guesses anywhere. Why would you make presumptions and take guesses when you can actually know? So the more you do in the foundation of building any business, the more certainty you're creating in the output, and then the potential conversion for sales, which, we kind of all want that, rather than, quite often people create brands, especially within the creative industry, it becomes very personal and very emotional, and it comes so from the heart, it becomes very heart-centered, and that makes it quite difficult to separate from the sort of commercial element of having a business, not necessarily being mass market, but the commercial element of trying to generate sales and an audience. And I think the more strength you build in this initial stage, though it can be emotional when it can be your baby. I've had more than my physical babies. I had my shop, and I've had, various sort of professional babies as well. But the more you can remove yourself and be less emotional, the more smart decisions you'll make, and the more you will assess the wider opportunity and world around what you're doing. Because when we become very emotional in how we create these brands and businesses, we don't always make the best decisions, because it becomes very about us and how we see the world and what we want to do. And the more you can kind of go a little bit like that rather than like that, and but have the strength internally to assess and look at all of the macro sort of impacts, and then your customer, so the funnel of kind of there's you and where that go, then you're just, without calling this pillars and strength, it's building those stones. I said that when we do the sort of branding process, we call it the brand key. It's building that key to unlock, the sort of the world of. And I think it's that you could have a brand that you build, and you build that world of and the strength around it, and you might decide to sit dormant on it for 5 years, but you still have that brand. Frida Industries is a brand that I created a few years ago before I did Slingshot, which actually initially was going to be as sort of more as Slingshot is. And I created all the the sort of values and brand around that. And then it sat there because I started Slingshot with someone else. But actually I've gone back to it now with my vintage selling, because the values and the whole essence of it applies, because it was the brand that I created. It wasn't about the services it provided. So all the spirit of that is still right for that, and it's a completely different business. So once you build that brand, that's the tangible, and that's what people sell. You know, people say, oh, I'm selling the business. You're not selling the skirts and tops that you made. You're selling the brand. That's what they bought. You know, that's what's the Topshop. They bought the brand. They're not bought the actual physical product. That's whatever, that's seasonal. But they've bought the brand and the value in that brand that the audience and the customers have, and the trust. So when I talked last week about branding, it's about building that trust. And that's what you're trying to build with your audience. So the more it becomes strong, and you know, sort of with the values, now talking about that, it's build something and create and sort of think about those values as something that you can put yourself in the position of the customer and imagine that that's something you can relate to, you know, and that's what we sort of need to think about a little bit. I'm just going to move on a little bit and just go through a few bits, but we can go through more, and we can also in questions shortly, and which I know we've been doing that for a little while, which I think is good. I'm just going to do this as a little reminder to show you my values, just so that you can remind yourself, but just how it can look when you sort of pull that together again. So these are Slingshots values: creativity, synergistic, focused and strategic, and dynamic. Now, I don't know if you haven't had a chance, then you could have a look at the website. You could have a look at the Slingshot Instagram, and you can make me accountable and decide if you feel that it actually stands for that. But it's these for us. That's the things that cover how we act, how we look, how we speak, how we behave, how we connect, how we do everything. So it's you know, that whole idea of partnerships, of collaboration, of you know, being energetic, but that impacts everything. So it impacts the way we speak, even the delivery of me doing this. You know, if my values were being quite safe and sort of strong and traditional, the delivery of a course like this would be much more formulaic and slightly different. But because for me, I dress like a mad one anyway. But if I was sat here in a brown tweed suit, but I'm saying that we're a dynamic business, even though that's the physical output of what you know, as I'm sort of representing the brand, it wouldn't make sense. And you'd think, okay, well, that's a bit weird. I don't quite trust it. It doesn't fit. And it's things like that you would kind of, I mean, I have dressed up for you ladies, but but it becomes a part of who you are, because you know, or whatever you do. So it's just keeping that in your mind. So with the values, and then we're going to go on and just talk about, so I'm going to show you, this is here we go. Part of what I'm going to ask you to do this week as well is some visual. So I'm going to ask you to start a Pinterest board. That for now it can all go into one board, but I want you to think about, and you may have done this before, and that's fine, but I want you to rethink about it. This is not what your clothes look like or your jewelry looks like. I want you to put images in of what it feels like. So this is the brand spirit inspired by the values. So I've said we're dynamic, focused, creative, synergistic. For now, you can chuck in as many images as you like. It might be an image of a bit of fabric. It might be an image of a firework. It might be an image of a book. It might be a quote. It might be anything that pulls together part of the representation of what your brand feels like. So it's, you know, sort of experts. For us, it's that kind of creative element, the sort of Frida style coming together. But it can be anything. It can be anything. It can be completely non-related to your product. It's not about that. It's about what your brand feels and looks like. The physical element of what it looks like. Now, this is some of the words that are the spirit that is defined by the values. So it's not the words of the value, but it's defined by it. So expressive obviously comes from the creative side of things, and playful, ironic, authentic. So again, you know, it comes from that sort of deep sense of being true, which has evolved over the 4 or 5 years, and you know, and everything we do now is around inclusivity, diversity, and sustainability. It has always been, but it's become a real clear definition of the business. Then it's not within our values, but it's the spirit and the sort of personality of what we are. So again, for now, it's up to you. You can create a couple of boards, or put it all into one for now. But the attitude. So the spirit is the attitude. So the values are how you sort of what you live by, and the spirit is kind of so if there's any element of, so for you, Emma, you know, with sort of if that escapism and that adventure, that can come in here. That's in the spirit and the attitude side of things. And if that sort of free-spirited side is for example for you, and allow, if you know, if it is that kind of that very sort of ethical kind of, and actually I think was it Karina said about the sort of simplicity and the minimalism. Again, some of that, this isn't a mood board for a collection. This is still about your brand. So it's the attitude of your brand, and the personality is how you behave. So, you know, if your brand were a person, how would they act? I do this when we come to talk about the customer. It's sort of talking about actions and how people speak, and I'll go into a little bit more on that again. But if it's not today, we'll do that next week. But it's the stuff that that makes you who you are. You know, it's the personality is really important, because that's how people relate to you. So when you're building that world of, the values are the underpinning of it, and then you've got the sort of spirit of it, of how it feels, and the personality, how it behaves, and that sort of then builds up this kind of full world that both visually and connection wise becomes very tangible, in that it's something that people can connect with. And it is really important, and it, you know, it can help with the messaging. You know, as people, we connect or judge by characters of people, rather than just, you know, they go there, they do that, you know, you judge people by the character and how they behave, and people do that with brands as well. So just remembering that when you're working on your own or building your own brand. So you could do one that it's up to you if you want to separate it. But you can do a personality and spirit one together. So defining the attitude and the sort of alignment, you know, what you're sort of giving back, showing you off, the storytelling, and yeah, it's a great way to bring it to life. And also, when you start to go through Pinterest and you're looking at stuff, like I say, if you've already got a collection, it's not about your collection. It is the guts of the brand, if that makes sense. And what I also want you to do within that is start to think about, you can pull out some quotes. So it's kind of like, it's kind of quotes and wording that kind of, that can just sum up. There might even be things that you say quite a lot as a brand. This isn't from Slingshot. This was a client, actually, this one. You know, I mean, for us, one of the sort of examples of our personality was go hard or go home. And I had a business partner. She actually left last year, but it became, it really came to life. I was the go hard and she was the go home, quite literally and figuratively. So we kind of completely, and actually I'm getting that one done. I'm doing renovation on my London house, and I'm getting that in neon and work hard, play hard. But that whole, people are going to stir and make it worth it. It's sort of the quotes around, wording around some of your attitude. This is, I don't know if you know Sadie Clayton. We did a whole branding project for her a few years ago. It makes shit happen. It's kind of the wording around the attitude. It doesn't mean you're going to say this all the time, but it's what's the form of expression that would sum up your tone of voice as a brand. So you might just find a few quotes in Pinterest. There's loads in there that, or again, this can be a process in a brainstorm. You might find some and then you chuck them out and they're not right. But sort of the sort of visual, I like that one there. Strong women intimidate boys and excite men. And then with this, branding is about building. So we've got our values that are the kind of real rock and the pillars. Then we're building up the spirit and personality, which is the sort of attitude and how we behave. We've talked before, last week about root strengths. And then we want to sort of look at the reasons to believe. Why? I sort of mentioned it last week, but that's sort of where we then move on to after that, of looking at the reasons to believe, of the backup. It's almost like the appendices at the end. It's a backup to the content. It's where it came from. It's the resource. It's why should you believe it? I don't need you to do anything on this, but just to sort of be thinking about it. It's like, if like you're talking about sustainability and ethical sort of side of things, it's like, why should people believe you on that versus anything else? And it's sort of the sort of creds behind it, but it's also the any element of it. And we're sort of build it. All of this is building your brand and NDA. God, I've been doing contracts. So DNA, the DNA. It's what is that, the sort of the raw sort of the brand promise, and that sort of sums up everything. It's kind of the tangible touch points. It's if people were to really strip your brand down to nothing, what would they find? What's the DNA? The sort of brand promise, the personality, the identity, the purpose. And if part of that purpose is driving sustainability, or if it's driving inclusivity, or if it's around whatever it is, I might leave the next bit. I think we might leave that till next week, talking more about messaging and the big idea and customer stuff, because I don't want to go over too much today. What we might do is do some more questions, because I'm just conscious of time, that I've already taken up an hour of your time. Let's do some questions if anyone has any, or if you want to talk about any of the stuff I've gone over. And also if you're clear about what you need to do for these Pinterest boards. Because what I think you'll really find is, I think a part of what I want you to do this week is go back over your values, to start to go back as a second sort of draft almost. Think about wording around your spirit and personality. They're different words to the values. If you remember, ours was more playful, the ironic. They're not pillars, but they become words that are important to encapsulating your brand. So you can think a little bit about words that might be relevant to your spirit and personality. And then the Pinterest board is a visual representation of your brand. So the spirit and personality, any quotes that you feel really hit home. This is where, if you are, for example, doing anything around the ethical side or any other topics, you can be sort of throwing anything that's where you can kind of some of that can come in, or be sort of useful to sort of almost put into as a visual industry. Then this can often be a good way for you to be able to put the pictures into the words as well. So does that make sense to everyone? And is it helpful? I know and actually I know we've gone a lot over the values again, but like I said, this is something that can take quite a long time. And I think it's not underestimate, I'm saying, yeah, pick 4 words, easy. No, it's not. This is like literally the foundation of all of it. So I think it's good to keep thinking about it and then sort of adding a bit on. And I think if you are, if you come to all 4 within this series, and by the end of those 4 you kind of feel quite a bit clearer about your values, then I think it's not been a bad 4 hours spent, probably, because that will give you, if nothing else, that it will hopefully help everything else after that, so I don't know if anyone has any more questions around any of this. Like I say, I think that what I will, though, this is all around mindset, and I think that in a world that is bloody tough, and we're in, still in this craziness, I said at the last one, I think it's a brilliant time for setting up business. I think it's a great time for small business, for entrepreneurs, and these times as well of like recession is when some of the great ideas come from that. And so I think it's a good time to do that, but I think that this stuff is the power for you to give you more strength than anyone else, and you're competing in a crazy world, so the stronger you can make your business, the better. The other bit, depending on what your trade is and your background, that's probably the bit you can do standing on your head anyway. This is the bit that it's kind of adds the legs and the body and the hands and the arms and all of it, but to the product bit. As I said in the last one, I don't want you to even think when you get to the stage of thinking about awareness and pushing out and the marketing, the PR side, you're not selling the lovely skirts or tops that you've got behind you there. That's not what you're selling. You're selling this brand. Your messaging and marketing, it's all around selling this world, not we've done a lovely dress, please buy it. That's not what you're going to do, hopefully, after these 4 sessions. You're going to be thinking about, you're going to be selling the alignment with your values. That's what people are going to buy into. And you could sell them all sorts of shit if you want to by that point. Not that you will, but that's not the point. The point is they want to be in your gang. We've always talked about it as a business and a brand and an agency. We always talk about building our tribe, and sort of, do you want to be in our gang? Because that's what it is. It's kind of, if you align with what we're doing in general, then you're in our gang. You're in our gang now anyway, but it's, we do these Slingshot speaks. So tomorrow, this talk, this Instagram live I'm doing, it's building the world of it. And actually, you can be a financially unsuccessful business, but look like you're doing amazingly by having this world and tribe, which isn't necessarily great, but it just means you've got something to do something with. What you do with it after that is up to you. But that sort of that building your tribe, because your tribe then become advocates, ambassadors, or customers, or they become the ones that help you take it to another stage, and then actually make money out of it.